Hello, welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice, which you may not have known already from the voiceover because maybe there isn't a voiceover. We're trying to, we figured that 11 months in might be enough time for us to stop having the voiceover that says that me and Ellie host the show. And
so I'm formal. I've been, my 11-month trial period's over.
Oh, no, what I'm saying is there's probably not a voiceover saying anything, just that it's not Ellie. You still are obviously on probation at all times. Joe Patrice from Above the Law. We're hosting here. Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer. I am the other voice you heard is our provisional host. Her name is
provisional.
Her
Interim?
name. Hold on. Catherine. Yeah, Catherine Ravino from Above the Law is here.
You got jokes today.
Well,
how was your holiday?
It was fine. Some good stuff.
Low key, lots of turkey.
Yeah. Turkey aplenty. I'm gonna have to rejigger my weight loss plans a little bit, but yeah.
You know what? I think that through the holiday season and after the year we have had, I think that just being healthy and happy is probably its own victory.
Yeah, see, that seems like too much
for me when I say that.
Oh, that's so much self-helpy talk.
It's self-helpy talk because it actually helps yourself.
I'm a lawyer. I don't
grumble at me.
Yeah,
First of all, you're no longer a lawyer.
I am absolutely still a lawyer. The fact that I don't take active cases doesn't mean that I don't pay my bar dues. Go to my CLEs.
You are significantly happier than when you were a lawyer. So one might think that this self-help regime would be useful to you.
Whatever.
You know what I miss about being a lawyer, though?
What do you miss about being a lawyer?
I am happier for sure.
The answer
writing.
is money, but go on.
And that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because, it's officially bonus season.
Biglaw bonus season.
Woo! Yeah, this is the time of year when I question all of my choices in life because I spend an awful lot of time writing about bonuses that are very large.
I just was looking to see if I have in my handy dandy sound effect machine a cheer, and this one doesn't. I'm kind of at least it's not as a default. I'm gonna have to make some changes, make sure that we get a sound effect machine that covers all the range of emotion that we need to have on this show.
Happy and sad. It just has to cover happy, sad, and maybe angry. 3. Happy, sad, angry.
Yeah, I have a laser though.
Do you? Let me hear.
It's just. Yeah.
What scenario do you think we're going to use the laser sound effect?
I don't know. I didn't come up with this. These are the defaults.
There's no happy one. I find that hard to believe.
Not really.
There's no cheer. There's no horn. There's
that horn.
That is the saddest horn.
Yeah. And then there's ambient noise. Yeah, no. But
so you have a crappy sound effect board.
No, it's a good board, but they expect you to populate it with your own stuff that you want, and they just give you a few defaults.
So
and
it's user error.
Yeah, well, it's a new one. I used to have a different board, and the different board had a lot more defaults that seemed useful. So I didn't think that I needed a new happy or a new horn or whatever.
Happy,
but I
sad,
do.
Maybe funny, a funny
dark and sleepy and anyway. So that's
what the dopey sounds like right there.
Oh, you've got jokes today.
I try. No, but bonuses are a thing.
Oh, right. Something about law. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Go on. Yes, back to the actual law.
I am rolling my eyes so hard, right? Put that on your list of necessary sound effects.
Eye rolls?
Something that signifies that I am rolling my eyes. Sort of
Right. No, I can do that.
So anyway, yes, bonuses are here. And, obviously it's good news and it's COVID-19. So any news is good news, but they're not particularly exciting.
Well, there's a lot of money here. People are people are making double their salary at a certain point in their career, basically. So that's.
I don't think that's quite where it is because the largest salaries are for those who are making quite a bit of money. But yes, it does range from $15,000 to $100,000 depending on class year, which is a lot of money. But the extra, the special sauce is obviously, which was something we've talked about previously, are the COVID-19 appreciation bonuses, special bonuses that range between $7,500 and $40,000, depending on class year. And here's the thing that really gets me about those. So the year-end bonus numbers, the 15 to 100,000 numbers, those are the same bonus ranges that we saw last year and the year before. And it's been that range for quite a while. And it's not that the firms don't have the ability to give more money. Indeed, most of them are giving more money in the form of these special bonuses, but kind of carving them out in this special vehicle allows them to say, we're matching last year's year-end bonuses, as opposed to saying the whole bonus pool. When the reality is, unless there's additional special bonuses next year, most associates will not make the same amount of money as they did in 2020 as they will in 2021. So it's kind of carving out these special things that allow firms to say, we're doing the same thing, nothing's changed, when in fact the actual dollar amounts have changed.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out, because obviously we've talked over the years, and in particular, if you read Above the Law, as I know everybody does, if you've read Above the Law over the years, you've noted we've talked a lot about a trend, which is an increasing gap between the haves and have-nots when it comes to Biglaw. There was a day when the top 100 firms were all firms with lots of money to throw around, and increasingly there's a gap where the top 20 to 25 are doing much better than that next tier.
And I think that COVID-19 has only exacerbated the issue.
And that's what I was going to say, is it seems as though while we've seen law perform better than many other sectors in the economic slowdown that we've had, it does seem to be like a Plinko thing dropping through all the whatever. That money seems to be ending up once more in the hands of the firms we consider the haves. That means that we're going to increasingly run into, and that's also, we saw this with layoffs and furloughs and stuff like that the firms that have all the money didn't need to do those things, and the next tier kind of did. Given that that's going to happen, how that plays out over the next year's bonus and salary decisions is going to be interesting, because I think you're right. This carve out means that people are going to have an excuse to give people less money as bonuses next year. But it's also going to be an issue where, are they going to be able to keeping up with the bigger firms? Because the bigger firms are going to have to start eventually noting that they have revenue flying in from all over the place, and maybe it's time that they up their bonuses. And will these other firms be able to keep up? Obviously, bonuses is only one factor of this, and bonuses, while nice, what's nicer is salary increases, which we get. We've been blessed with a couple of them right in a row over the very recent
2018,
history.
I guess, was the most recent
over
one.
very recent history, but before that, it was
10 years, right?
A very long time. So are we going to start seeing a different salary scale, which we generally don't have? We kind of have the firms hewing mostly to the old rule of 100 firms are exactly the same, all in one tranche, and then a big dip, and then people getting paid at lower tranches at smaller places. Are we going to start seeing the creation of what would be kind of a trinomial?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we very well may. And it should also be noted when we're talking about even the largest, most successful firms, the ones that are doing just fine during this current economic slowdown, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have avoided layoffs or just in general, because I think that a lot of firms, even successful ones, have taken the opportunity, I use that word in quotation marks, of COVID-19 to rejigger their business model. We've seen a lot of staff layoffs, even at very successful firms, buyouts, layoffs, various ways of just reducing their administrative staff, that because of working from home policies at several places, I think that these plans have been in the works for a very long time, and have used sort of the excuse of working from home to actually implement these plans and these changes in their staffing. But I think a lot of places are seeing that, they don't have, and this has been true for a while, they've been slowly reducing their overall administrative staff, because every partner does not need their own secretary, whatever, and it's only getting more pronounced.
Well, and we actually discussed this on a previous iteration of this. I think that the worst part is that these decisions had needed to be made for a while, but they put them off in good times thinking, well, we can afford it. We'll keep people on. And then when bad times happen, that's when they pull the trigger. And unfortunately, that means that the people getting laid off are being laid off at a time when they can't find another job, as opposed to back when there was ample opportunity. So it kind of works at cross purposes. But it's unfortunate, but you're right. I mean, these are all changes that we're going to see play out over the next year or more. Have you ever wondered about previous economic crises, though?
Every day.
Yeah. How have law firms weathered previous economic downturns and come out stronger on the other side? LexisNexis Interaction has released an in-depth global research report confronting the 2020 downturn, lessons learned during previous economic crises. Download your free copy at interaction.com/likealawyer to see tips, strategies, plans, and statistics from leaders who have been through this before and how they've reached success again.
Speaking of economic downturns.
Okay.
Well, no, it strikes me that we are, in a global kind of downturn, and what that tends to mean historically is an increase in law school applications as folks are looking for a safe harbor to spend 3 years to kind of wait out the economic turmoil.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, it's interesting. We originally thought this wasn't going to happen. And you're right. There is this trend where people throw themselves in law school because, hey, it's 3 years.
It's a great place to wait.
3 years to put off having to deal with the job market. On the back end, you'll have a professional degree. That seems like a good idea to a lot of people. We thought that wasn't going to be a big issue this time around, and we did on one of our other special edition shows. We did some interviews with some folks that said that from what they were seeing at the time, there were more applicants opting to just take the year off, defer, don't do anything. Like, we don't know where things are going to go.
And that makes sense, too, why there were so many people interested in deferring law school because of working from home and school and remote schooling options, right? That spending the amount of money that a law school degree costs and having to do it in your bedroom does not sound great.
Right. So there were people putting it off because they thought of that. And we thought that was going to happen. And the advice we were getting in those interviews were that you probably shouldn't be doing that, because if you choose, you really want to go to law school, you should go for it, because the entire profession being pushed off a year is only going to hurt somebody, and there's going to be fewer opportunities the year after. So you should, if you really want to do it, you should keep going for it. Anyway, it seems as though people took that to heart. Because since that earlier in the summer interview, law school applications are surging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people are applying to more schools than they usually do. I think the average is about 5 schools. People are applying to north of 6 now. I don't think we have precise numbers yet, but everyone who's processing these from LSAC is saying that
like 4 times as many applicants.
I don't know if it's that bad, but that there's a lot.
Yeah.
People are going to try to go to law school now. So where do we? I mean, like I feel somewhat responsible because I feel like we, in the summer, we're telling people, hey, don't be putting things off. You should do this, to avoid getting yourself in a bind. But that wasn't to suggest that you should go to law school. That was to say, if you are going to go to law school, do it now. We're not particularly happy about the idea that anyone might have taken that advice to be go to law school when you don't want to.
I don't think people have, or don't think they listened to anything we said would think that was our position. But I do think it's interesting. Now, these are the application numbers. We might still see, as a result of, even though there are increased applications, we still might see even more deferrals, depending on what the remote learning opportunities are and so on and so forth. Even though there are more applicants, if you get in, people still might be interested in deferring, right? So that still might be an issue, which kind of pushes the problem of admission a year into the future, right? Because if there's a significant percentage of folks who are delaying for a year, that decreases the number of opportunities or slots, like literal places, classroom seats,
right,
in next year's cycle. So that still could happen, as far as I can tell. But and I do think it's a terrible idea to go to law school because you don't know what else to do.
Right.
And I think that seeing these kinds of surges very much makes me think that there are more than a few folks who are confused about what they want to do with the rest of their life. It's a confusing time. And a law degree seems super stable, seems, as you said, it's a professional degree. I can spend 3 years. You'll always be a lawyer, even if
Yeah.
you're not practicing anymore. That's still who
See,
you are.
I feel as though you're turning this back around on me. Go ahead.
You should get used to that feeling. But I would hesitate to tell people to go to law school because they don't know what else to do. It's a terrible reason to go to law school. It's still an incredibly expensive degree. Ignore what we said in the beginning of the show about the large amounts of money that lawyers get, because the majority of people who graduate from law school will not have access to the kind of bonus numbers that we're talking about.
Yes.
Right? The majority of folks are not making over $100,000.
Certainly not as a bonus. Yeah, no, and that is key.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to go down this law school path, you don't want to sound snobby, but take real stock of whether or not you're going to a school that's going to provide you with access to a job on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wealth of information over at Law School Transparency about different schools' ability to do that. And you can see that there
And the above the law school rankings takes these kind of outputs into
Yes. But we only do the top 50. But if you are going to some schools that may not be there, you can get a real sense from LST what's going on. But just be aware that not all law degrees are created equal, and there are fewer law jobs that are at least paying than you'd think. We have a shortage of lawyers in certain sectors in this country, but those sectors are not providing the money that will pay off your student debt. So that's an equation you have to be in a position to consider.
Yeah. And listen, there's nothing wrong. You lose an application fee if you're like, I don't know what I do. Let me throw in a law school application and see what happens. And, you lose your fee, but that's it. But before you actually decide to go to law school and take out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loans, you really need to ask yourself what you legitimately can get out of it, and also whether or not that will make you happy. You and I both went to law schools, and we both went to big law firms after. We had the sorts of jobs that are supposed to help you service your loans and do all that kind of stuff. But, it's a lot of hours. It's the work that you are doing may not always be the kind of work you think you're going to do when you go to law school. And I know on my other podcast, The Jabot, that's a question I always ask my guests, like, is this what you imagined you would do when you went to law school? And listen, like most of the people I'm interviewing are people who are doing great work for diversity efforts, because that's what that whole podcast is about, right? So whatever. But the majority of the time, it's not what they envisioned when they applied to law school, when they dreamt about being a lawyer. And your day-to-day life is very different. And big law is a grind, and it's not for everyone. And that doesn't make you bad in some way, right? The happiest people I know are former big law lawyers.
Yeah, but that said, I very much entered the big law world with an eye on getting out of it. I entered with the idea that I would do that for a while, develop skills and make connections, and then move to something that was lower key. But it would also afford me the money I needed to make a significant enough dent in my loans that I would be able to make that sort of decision. So I feel like I did what I intended, but that's just it. I knew I was going to be in a situation where I could get said big law job and pay it down. The real problem are the folks who take out $300,000 worth of loans and then go to a law school that means that they are very unlikely to get a job that gives them $100,000 bonuses, at which point they're now behind the 8 ball as far as their loans go and kind of stuck. That's what you need to be kind of cognizant of when you go into it, is have a plan for how you're going to get that money. Because even if you don't want to be a big law lawyer forever, you might need to, depending on how much money you're spending. So there's that. Anyway, sometimes it's about what you want to do. Like I went in and, did litigation. I wasn't really a transactional person, but, if you work with contracts and don't use contract tools, you're missing a lot. Save time, make more money, and do a better job for your clients with Contract Tools by Paper Software. Contract Tools is the most powerful Word add-in for working with contracts. Thousands of lawyers all over the world rely on contract tools every day for every kind of deal. Visit papersoftware.com to watch a demo and get a free trial. As a special offer to podcast listeners, use coupon code LTN2020 to get 1 month free. That's papersoftware.com and LTN2020. So there was a little story that just came up over the weekend, kind of under the radar holiday weekend news dump situation. The Justice Department is trying to bring back firing squads.
So that doesn't sound great.
So it certainly, that's the opinion that most of the media seems to have. A lot of very breathless headlines talking about how there's a firing squad push going on within the Justice Department. They also are trying to bring back the electric chair, which for some reason didn't get nearly the...
Well,
and this is what I find interesting.
Visceral, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's what it is. Like, there's something optical about firing squads that really seems to get people riled up. It's also true that this proposed rule is curtailing, like cutting in half the usual comment period. It's really a rush job to try and get this on the books before January 20th, which is weird because I heard that they aren't actually going to lose. But apparently, they feel like they need to get this done. So firing squads are back, or going to be back, and I don't necessarily think this is the worst idea.
I mean, the death penalty is pretty bad generally.
Right. So I'm going to cabin that off.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not really a huge fan of the idea of death.
Don't say obviously. Plenty of people aren't. That's why
Fair
we
enough.
still have it.
I guess fair enough. But it strikes me as though the idea, like as weirdly visceral as you put it, as the firing squad is as an event. Justice Sotomayor wrote an opinion a few years ago talking about firing squads versus lethal injections and noted in it that, frankly, firing squads, by all the data we have, are a more humane and less likely to be botched form of execution. And what Justice Sotomayor was kind of getting at in this, obviously this was a case where she's not a legislator, she can't get rid of the death penalty, but was arguing about, to the extent that we play this game of cruel and unusual punishment, why is it really that we have this reaction to firing squads being so bad as opposed to lethal injections, which we now have tons of evidence to suggest are really horrifying. And it is an interesting question. Obviously, the jumping off point of this story for me was seeing as so many people, especially in social media, started reacting and going kind of frantic about how problematic it was that the administration was looking at firing squads. And all I could think was, well, is this a sign of, A, the kind of erosion of trust that people have in this particular Justice Department, that there's ill motives suggested for anything they do? Or is it that people just really viscerally have a problem with firing squads or whatever? But it kind of led me to think maybe this is time where everybody should take a moment to have a serious talk with themselves about why is it that this thing that evidence suggests is, if the death penalty in any way fits the definition of avoiding cruel and unusual punishment, this would be the way to do it. And yet, that's the one that nobody feels comfortable with, and that people are instead really pushing the one that we have ample evidence to suggest is really bad.
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely an over-medicalization of kind of our society in general, right? And I think that, I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend that I know a ton of stuff about this, but it seems that even though we do have the evidence that lethal injections can be botched and are actually awful for the person experiencing it, they are often quiet because of other drugs that they're given first, right? So there's a silence to it, like there's a silence to it. There's also, this is a medical procedure versus a murder, right? Which, guns are typically seen as, a violent instrument, whereas...
I mean, I see them as freedom.
Okay.
No.
Okay. but it's an instrument of violence versus an instrument of medicine, which I think is actually probably psychologically much more damaging to use medicine to kill people. But,
Look, I'll also say that I don't think that there's anything particularly redeeming about this effort, because I don't think that this is an effort to actually bring more.
Right. This is not an effort to be humane.
This is not about humane. The fact they're also trying to bring back the electric chair is evidence of that. This was really more that as lethal injection drugs become more and more scarce, as manufacturers don't want to make them anymore because
they're in the business of making medicine.
Well, and the bad PR that comes with the increasing evidence that these are not working.
Whereas the gun manufacturers already have that bad PR. So.
Right. But this was more an effort to just add more options to the bag of tricks that the federal government has. So I don't really think it's getting at that point that Justice Sotomayor was making. However, I think that it's a good opportunity for us to revisit kind of her words, and not even her words, but her marshaling of the evidence, and to look into that and kind of consider why is it we, society-wise, have this concern about that. And I think your points about medicalization play into it. I think there's an optical level to which the blindfold and cigarette with a bunch of bayoneted guns pointed at you seems like it just feels like a tin pot dictatorship in a way that, you want America not to be.
I think that has a lot more to do with the observers of the execution than it does with the actual person being executed, because of those visceral images of guns pointed at someone versus lying on a cot and getting an injection.
Well, and then the question is, what is really the death penalty? Is it for dealing with the condemned, or is it for the observer? And at the point that it becomes about the observer, that probably should force you to grapple with some different questions.
Sure.
Which
we won't as a society.
A society won't. But again, my point was, it was one of those instances where a story came out over the weekend, and the reaction to it just made me start thinking about how we often jump in ways that are not probably the most advisable way of responding to a story.
Fair.
Obviously not at Above the Law, where we always jump in the right directions, but what other media outlets, the inferior media outlets that you may run
Fake
across
news,
in your day-to-day life don't do. So, with that said,
that's a super happy story to end.
I thought so. It's not like we had particularly great stories all around. It's like bonuses, they're kind of boring. Oh, and you're probably not going to get a job at a law school. So firing squads was frankly the...
It was we're going downhill though, right? It went from not as exciting as it could be to literal murder. So
okay, so I made everybody feel better about their bonus. How about that?
Good job.
Yeah, look, I'm trying here. So with that said, thank you for all coming in and listening. This is a show that you should be subscribed to rather, than just listening to it every week when it pops up on the website, though we do appreciate that. If you subscribe, that helps our numbers a bit. It also allows you an opportunity to review it, not just give it stars, but write something. That all helps the algorithm recognize that we're out there. You should be reading Above the Law. You should be following us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Catherine1, the numeral 1. You should listen to the Jabot, which she already referenced because she cleverly made a plug mid-show for her other show.
It wasn't a plug. It was an organic statement of fact.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so yes, you should listen to the Jabot, which is her show talking about diversity in law and so on. And I also do the Legal Tech Week, Legal Tech Roundup, kind of. Say that's Legal Tech Week's the show name, but it's a roundup from legal tech journalists about what's going on in legal tech. You should listen to the other Legal Talk Network shows, of which there are almost too many to count anymore. And you should be checking out Paper Software's contract tools. And with all of that said, I think we're done.
Peace.
Okay. Oh, that's what it is. Oh, you were just holding up 2, and I thought, oh, what's the 2 I'm supposed to say?
Peace.
Oh, because you were doing a yeah. Okay.
Peace.
Fair enough.